On today's episode of What's Going On with Shipping. An Allision took place off the coast of Australia. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So this event took place on July 16th, 2024, off the northeast coast of Australia between a bulk carrier, the HL Echo, which ran into the bow of the anchored YM Serenity. We're going to take a look at both these ships, what happened, what's going on in the story, and some details that are not being discussed right now. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to be alerted about new videos as they come out. So here's the story over at G Captain. A dramatic collision between bulk carriers off Queensland coast. Incident took place on July 16th between the LNG fueled-equipped bulk carrier HL Echo while maneuvering to anchor at Hay Point. Reportedly suffered a main engine propulsion issue, resulting in a loss of control in its collision with the anchored YM Serenity. So let's take a look at the video here, because the video right from the beginning in that story says a couple of things that is just wrong. Number one, it says that the Elko lost propulsion while maneuvering into the anchorage, and that's when the collision occurred. But one of the things you'll see in the video here is that HL Elko is underway. She is actually maneuvering. So you're seeing this from the starboard side of the YM Serenity looking forward. And here you're seeing the port side of HL Echo. Now, what you're going to see is crew members begin to head forward here in a second. Now, they're not just heading forward to film, although that's what they're doing here. You're going to see that. They're heading up onto the bow. YM Serenity, the vessel you're on right here, is anchored. Both these vessels are large bulk carriers. The big export out of this port at Hay Point is coal. You'll see them heading up onto the bow here. You're going to see the anchors up forward. It appears they begin to let go the anchors a bit. They are anchored, but they're going to begin to loosen them up a bit. Those are the capstans there for the anchors, the anchor windlasses. Now you're seeing HL Echo coming in. The argument was that this ship was adrift. It doesn't appear to be adrift, and we're going to go back and look at marine traffic at the time. One of the things to notice here are these big tanks, these kind of big, huge tubs here on the side. So HL Echo uses liquefied natural gas as a propulsion means. Those saddle tanks, one on the port side, one on the starboard side, carried liquefied natural gas. That's not good, as you're about to see here. Sounds like Elko is rubbing up against the anchor chain of the ship and now coming up against the bow of YM Serenity. So you'll notice here a little bit of dust kicking up. HL Echo, when it hits the anchor chain on YM Serenity, may be causing the chain to vibrate a bit and send dust up. Right there. Okay. I would not be up in the bow of this situation, because that right here is a massive liquefied natural gas tank. This is the bulwark up on the bow. This is the kind of the railing there. And what you're seeing is the bulwark is penetrating the outer shell of the liquefied natural gas tank. Now, according to reports, the ship was not loaded with liquefied natural gas this time, or they didn't penetrate into the inner shell. What you're going to see is a lot of white come out of this. That is the insulating foam. So not a square-on hit, but enough to do some damage to the port LNG tank on the HL Echo and to cause damage to the bow of YM Serenity. All right, we're going to go all Juan Brown here and kind of reenact what happened here using marine traffic. So this took place here on the coast of Australia. We're going to go ahead and zoom in here. The time is set for 16 July at 00 UTC time. One of the things I want to zoom in here to see is, number one, is all the green dots here. Those are all anchored ships. HL Echo is coming into the anchorage, and they've been assigned a specific anchorage by the VTS, the vessel traffic system in the area. And you'll see right here, this is the anchorage they're heading into. And over here is YM Serenity. And we're going to see the Elko coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and let this play. And you'll see Elko coming in at this time, roughly around 3 knots, maneuvering in, not unusual, coming into an anchorage, a very crowded anchorage with ships in nearly every anchorage here. You'll see CS Hangzhou to the starboard side of Elko. YM Serenity here is the port. They're maneuvering between 2 vessels in here in the anchorage. Now, according to reports, HL Echo is going to lose propulsion, and that is the cause of the problems. The issue with that is they're coming into an anchorage. They're getting ready to drop their anchor, and they're pretty much not quite square, but pretty good into the anchorage at this time. And if they start losing way here, which is what appears to be happening, then why not just drop the anchor? I'm not clear why they didn't go ahead and just release the anchor at this time. They're in the anchorage, pretty close to coming dead center here at this point. They could have dropped the anchor and then worried about recovering, because what happens here is that she gets underway, and you'll see this. She all of a sudden begins, and now she's maneuvering, picking up speed, and going almost 5 knots at this point. Now, she only came in at 3 knots, but now she's coming in at almost 5 knots. And you saw the visibility in the video. Clear visibility. There's no issue here with GPS spoofing or anything like that. You have the Mark I eyeball and the window there. So everybody sees exactly what is happening here. And HL Echo begins that turn, that sheer turn. Now, this AIS is not always as accurate as a electronic charting system, because the data isn't received as often. But you'll see HL Echo begin that turn here, and this is where she hits the Serenity along the bow, and that's where they pierce that port side LNG tank. Go ahead and let that play. You'll see YM Serenity comes loose at that time. So the reason YM Serenity becomes loose is obvious in the second video that was sent to me, is that HL Elko actually hangs up on the anchor of YM Serenity. Here you see one of the crew members up on the bow trying to secure the runaway anchor. He's tightening down on the capstan, trying to prevent that anchor from running. And what has happened is, as the ships collided, it actually fetched up the anchor chain of YM Serenity and begins to pull. Here they are securing that anchor. You see the anchor on the windlass. They're finally getting it secured. You saw the chain dust there. Still running. That's because of the amount of force that is actually pulling on that anchor. And as they go by, you'll see the port anchor is housed and secured. It was the starboard anchor that they grabbed. And when you look here at HO Elko, you'll see off on the port side, running back to the ship, the anchor chain from the vessel. It's actually hung up between the two and is now towing the YM Serenity behind the HL Elko. Just an amazing event to happen. You can see the markings on the anchor chain there, the white markings indicating how many shots are out. So for a brief period of time there, you had HL Elko steaming out while towing YM Serenity behind it. Eventually, they break loose. I'm not sure what they do to do that. I'm not sure if they just let the anchor chain run out from the vessel and disengage from it, or if the chain breaks loose. What happens is YM Serenity, once it is free, will head to the outer anchorage and anchor with its port anchor away from this situation. A really remarkable event that transpires here. And now you see the vessels, both of them, kind of underway. Now, unfortunately, what we didn't have was more video here, because it looks like they come very close to almost colliding again here in the anchorage. You'll see a very close approach where YM Serenity's bow coming close to HL Echo's stern. And eventually what we see is HL Echo is going to come to a stop here. They probably drop their anchor at that point. YM Serenity is going to get underway and maneuver out of the anchorage here. You see them drifting down. They've got speed on, and they're eventually going to head over here to this region out of the anchorage. In the meantime, the vessel that was in that anchorage, CL Dayang He gets underway, clearing the anchorage, and a series of tugs are coming out from the harbor to assist HL Echo. So just a little bit of information on the port. This is the port of Hay Point, one of the largest coal exporting ports in the world. It's moved so far in the financial year to date 96 million tons of coal. So pretty impressive, big, huge port. You saw all the vessels that were at anchorage there. So definitely a major port. This is the information on HL Echo. She is a bulk carrier, 4 years old, flagged in Panama. She has a carrying capacity of 179,000 tons, so 292 meters in length, a good size vessel. The ship itself has gotten underway from the port. It is up on the north coast of New Guinea at this time. It says it is coming from a location that it's not from, saying it's coming from Korea, heading for China. We know that it may have come out of Korea originally, but it had stopped in Australia at the time. This is a little better look of HL Echo here on the stern. You can see those large liquefied natural gas tanks that are there. LNG is used as a fuel, especially inside coastal waters of nations. Inside the environmental control areas, they really want you burning very clean fuel. And so liquefied natural gas has become a big fuel source for a lot of vessels. But you'll notice the size of these tanks. They are inordinately large because of the nature of liquefied natural gas. You don't carry it in the hull, you carry it in these tanks above. And that does make the situation a bit precarious when you get into collisions, that these tanks are vulnerable. The way you store liquefied natural gas is by supercooling it. That reduces the natural gas into a liquid form. These are not so much pressure vessels as much as temperature vessels. So you're reducing that temperature, that reduces the volume of it. And if you penetrate a liquefied natural gas tank, you get what's called a boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. Really bad thing. It is changing liquid to vapor very quickly, and you don't want to be anywhere near that. But fortunately, that was not the case here with the collision between the two ships. This is YM Serenity, so Yangnan Serenity, currently in Indonesian waters, heading for Singapore. She was built in 2011, 13 years ago, flagged in Panama, 181,000 ton bulk carrier, very similar in size to HL Echo, 292 meters in length. So this is a story I want to bring you. This is out of Maritime Executive. The master of the HL Echo has been charged with criminal COLREGS violation for drifting into the bulker. Now, COLREGS is navigation rules of the road. This is what you follow in the navigation of a vessel. So just to read from this story, the marine casualty investigation to determine probable cause of the casualty has not been completed. It is believed the first time that a case like this has ever been brought in Australia. They talk about the situation here. They go in a little bit more detail here at the end. As she drifted, her port side struck the bow of the anchored bulker Serenity at low speed, damaging HL Echo's port side LNG fuel tank, tearing away HL Serenity's starboard anchor. And that is the anchor we saw. So that dust we saw was the anchor coming loose. According to local media, Captain Jim Woo Jun of HL Echo has been charged with a criminal violation of Marine Order 30, the Australian implementation of international collision prevention rules. That's COLREGS. Captain Jun has been held briefly pending the payment of bail at $20,000. His counsel requested an adjournment for a month for his defense to prepare for trial, according to the local Courier Mail. He's expected to return to his home country of South Korea once released. Prosecutor Sam Lansky acknowledged that this offense had never been charged in Australia before. He said the maximum possible penalty, if convicted, would be a fine of $26,000 US. What's not clear to me was the captain put back on the vessel to sail it back, or did he have to leave the vessel and allow the chief mate or somebody else to sail the vessel? Not really clear so far in the story about that. Seafarer advocates are increasingly concerned about the willingness of prosecutors to file criminal charges against mariners over unintentional marine casualties. They note that there that there are often traditional ways to seek redress, like pursuing a civil suit against the ship owner and operator. Quote, accidents happen in every industry, but no others treat their workers like criminals when they do, with the implication that they deliberately set out to cause a collision, injury, or spillage, warned Nautilus International in a 2019 study. Goes on, more seafarers than ever are turning away from the industry as a result, at a time when the industry is already struggling to attract new recruits. So I think it's a really interesting story for, obviously Australia is seeking this prosecution. Australia has been very strong in going against ships coming into their ports. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority has been going against ships. They've been black flagging vessels, not allowing them in, making sure that ships coming into the area are safe. Now you've got this criminal prosecution. It doesn't, again, the story doesn't quite jive that if the ship was losing power, why didn't they just anchor in that anchorage? They got underway at a speed faster than they came in and then collided with YM Serenity. It's not exactly clear what happened in this situation. So there's a lot of details that need to be worked out that's not exactly complete in this story. So we're going to be following this, see what happens. A really interesting story. I've seen a lot on this video, and I knew there was a little bit more to it based on the marine traffic report, and I was waiting to hear what Australia did before coming out with it. I didn't want to jump ahead here. I wanted to wait till we got some more information before we released the story. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? You hit that super thanks button down below, or head on over to Patreon and become a monthly or yearly subscriber. Until our next video, or Allision or Collision or whatever frick happens next in ocean shipping, this is Sal signing off.